The New York Times editorial board published an article on the eve of Memorial Day, and get this, it's demanding that the U.S. military stop celebrating what it deems white supremacy. It says, why does the U.S. military celebrate white supremacy? Arguing that it's, quote, time to rename military bases after American heroes, not after racist traitors. Well, here to break down that op-ed and its interesting timing is Newsmax's White House correspondent, Emerald Robinson. Emerald, welcome.
Hi, guys. Good to see you again. Happy Memorial Day.
Well, yes, you too. I've got to question the timing on this. It seems odd and stupid.
Well, honestly, Sean, when you see something like this from the New York Times, you have to question, is it really a serious newspaper anymore? The military is one of the last institutions that really still has the Americans, the public support behind it. Now, because of the timing of this, it is particularly distasteful in that it's the day before that we honor those Americans who have fallen in battle, and particularly to defend our freedoms like freedom of the press. And so what you're seeing here is, you know, a take on this patriotic holiday that's supposed to bring all Americans together through the liberal lens of picturing, you know, this American institution as something that aligns with identity politics or social injustice. And you saw a lot of pushback on that in the social media.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one thing to have a discussion. It's another to have it the day before Memorial Day. And it's also to paint the U.S. military with one sweeping brush is ridiculous. Emerald, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Look forward to seeing you back at the White House sometime soon this week.
Yes, thanks. Look forward to being back.
All right. While we're on the subject of race relations, the media hasn't spent a ton of time on Joe Biden's outrageous comments about black voters. In case you missed it, here it is again.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Oh, God. Well, Biden did apologize after his remarks were made that afternoon during a call with black leaders at the U.S. Black Chambers. So he said, I'm going to quote what he said, and bear with me because you may not understand completely how this works, but he says, quote, the last thing I want to do, and I should have been such a wise guy, I shouldn't have been so cavalier in responding to what I thought was anyway it was. I don't take it for granted at all, and no one should. No one should have to vote for any party based on their race or religion or background. Well, during an interview on MSNBC this weekend, the interviewee, radio host Charlemagne the God, responded to Biden's apology. Let's hear what he had to say.
Well, I don't even care about the words and the lip service, and the apology is cool, but the best apology is actually a black agenda. It has to come to a point where we stop putting the burden on black voters to show up for Democrats and start putting the burden on Democrats to show up for black voters.
Couldn't agree more. Well, here to talk about that is Bruce LeVell. He's the executive director of the National Diversity Coalition for Trump. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sean. Appreciate it.
All right.
Happy Memorial Day. And thanks for your service, Sean.
You bet. Absolutely. Well, I'm a little taken back by this whole thing because what the apology should be to are to the 1.3 million plus voters like you that did and will support President Trump, not to the radio interview host or to the group of people who do support Joe Biden. It's to the people that he left aside that don't agree with him.
Yeah. Well, you know, Joe is being Joe, Sean. And I'll tell you, the reason why he's being Joe is because he is part of that, as I call it, the generational curse of, you know, taking black Americans for granted, that they're going to, you better come this way. I funded this. We're going to give you this. And it's a curse. And so he's actually buying into that generational curse. And it's like, how dare you? And see, Sean, you got to remember, too, now, guys who look like me and the great men and women who look like me in this great nation. I'm here in Atlanta in the South. I've always said the strongest, most aggressive voter suppression is for people who look like me to even dare look at a conservative policy, or let alone look at President Trump. Oh my gosh, Sean, you're talking about throw the darts and the arrows. So this is that intimidation, this voter suppression. When you hear people like Stacey Abrams and all these folks try to throw the big bad boogeyman about the voter suppression, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you the biggest is the one when guys look like me and women who look like me go and look at the conservative policies and follow President Trump.
That's right.
So he's playing out who he really is, Sean.
Yep. Well, Bruce, thank you. I assume you mean people who look like you, the really good-looking people. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate you joining us on this Memorial Day, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
As it's the last Monday in May, we celebrate Memorial Day, and we come together as a nation to remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. Here to talk about how we can honor those who protected our freedoms is the Army Chief of Chaplains, Major General Thomas Solhjem. Chaplain, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Chaplain, you, throughout the course of your career, I assume, have presided over a lot of funerals. You've comforted families who have lost somebody. How do you view Memorial Day? How is it different for you? Because you've seen so many of those folks that have made the sacrifice and you've dealt with those families. How has that impacted your view of Memorial Day over the course of your career?
Yeah, it's very real. You know the people in many cases who have made the ultimate sacrifice. You've presided over the process of watching their fellow soldiers grieve, memorialize them, and then the family. And depending on where you were in location, sometimes I was in the combat zone, so we didn't see what was occurring on the other side other than through virtual means. But then having been on this side on the receiving end of dealing with the families who've experienced the loss of a loved one, it's a significant thing, and it impacts you. It really defines what it means to be a selfless servant and to make that ultimate sacrifice. And I live on Fort Myer, and as I'm sitting here, I have a clear view of Arlington National Cemetery from my quarters. So it's a constant reminder to me each and every day of not only those who have served their country, but those who are interned there who have made the ultimate sacrifice of their life. Many of them I knew personally.
You know, Chaplain Solhjem, oftentimes people might think of a chaplain who might be in a chapel or in a building somewhere, but you're actually in the war zone with these troops, with them, fighting alongside them. How do you support these troops when they've lost someone that's so close to them, their fellow soldier? What is it like to be there with them in the war zone?
Yeah, that's one, it's rewarding to be with them in the bonds of being a soldier and sharing in their hardships and being there when it matters the most and when it's the most difficult. That's what chaplains do. And I've found over the years that the soldiers in that time look to you to be a source of strength, to be a source of hope, and to help them to work through the process of loss together. There are awful strong bonds that occur between men and women who are willing to lay down their lives for each other. And it's just simply very rewarding to be a process of sharing that journey with them, to be there when they're hurting, to help them to heal and to move on with their lives and to never forget the sacrifice of their fallen comrades.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because a lot of times I feel like people kind of mix the message up of Memorial Day, and they go to people who have served or currently serving and say, you know, thanks for your service and we're honoring you today. And Veterans Day is dedicated to that, whereas Memorial Day is focused on those people who have already paid the ultimate sacrifice. How do you, in your role, as you minister to younger folks in particular, try to get them to understand the importance of understanding the sacrifice that so many people have made?
Yeah, that's a great distinction, and it's an important one to make. And I think we do that in units and organizations as they are reminded of those who have served in that organization, who have made the ultimate sacrifice. They often dedicate memorials to them. So it's a constant living reminder, as it were, of that ultimate sacrifice. We remember their sacrifice and we honor the service member. And it's seen also through the lens of the Gold Star families, which we have very strong relationships with. So those Gold Star families become a very important, integral part of how we memorialize the fallen. And it's everything from the relationships that the soldiers who served with them continue to carry their legacy and memory, and little simple things like memorial bracelets, which it's a reminder of someone who's paid the ultimate sacrifice of their lives. The Chaplain Corps is here to nurture the living and care for the wounded and honor the fallen. And that is our sacred duty, to ensure that we never forget those who have gone before.
You know, Chaplain Solhjem, you mentioned the Gold Star families, and today is not just a holiday for them. It is a day to remember the one that they have lost, and you mentioned the close relationships with them. How are you continually to encourage them and help them remember the sacrifice that their loved one has made?
Yeah, I think they're very well networked to the organizations or the units within the Army where their loved ones served. We maintain strong ties and relationships with them. If I knew them personally, or whether they served in the unit that I'm currently serving in, we never let those families forget that we have not forgotten their loved one. We not only engage them on Memorial Day, but throughout the course of the year. And it means a great deal to the families to know that their service member, in the case of the Army, their soldier was loved, and their memory is preserved. It's a significant emotional event for the families each and every year, not only on the date of the loss of their loved one, but events like these. And having the support network that the Army provides is very, very important to the Gold Star families, and their value to us to help us a living visual reminder that we should never forget.
Couldn't agree with that more. Chaplain Solhjem, thank you for joining us and sharing your message with us. Thank you for your service, and happy Memorial Day, sir.
Blessings to you both. God bless you, and thank you for the opportunity to share. And we just are thankful for those. As Lincoln said, they've given the full measure of devotion, and that we should highly resolve that those who have died have not died in vain. May we never forget. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. All right, we got a lot more to cover. Coming up, we're going to talk to the president of the American Gold Star Mothers Organization on how families remember their fallen heroes. And later, Medal of Honor recipient and retired U.S. Navy SEAL Lieutenant Michael Thornton is going to join us to talk about the National Medal of Honor Museum and Monument. Stick around.